The problem with that, I wonder if I can show that off, is that when you create that tiny little image, resize the window. What's wrong with the window?
Oh, well, go on.
Carry on.
Yeah, so the problem is when you make that tiny little image, the ratio of that tiny little image doesn't necessarily match up with the ratio of that big image. It's going to be close. It's going to be very, very close, but it may not be exactly the same. You may actually see like a little bit of deviation at the bottom, which I think happens with that first image. So let's put back that and that.
What's happening in the later ones?
It probably happens in all of them actually, because again, it's going to be off by a little bit. Okay, so when I refresh this, I want you to just keep an eye on the very, very bottom here. And I think you're going to see the image shift a little bit.
Oh yeah.
So you see like the little tiny bit of gray band, and then it's not there. If it's on a white background, people probably aren't going to notice this happening. When I put it on the gray background, of course you're going to notice it, but I didn't want you to see that I was padding out that area. So again, that's kind of an issue. Something else I thought of that might be cool, but might make things worse, I don't know, is maybe you wait until the image scrolls into view, and that's when you load the nice one in. That way, if somebody comes to this page and they only kind of look at the first paragraph in the first image, you're not loading a bunch of stuff in the background and wasting their bandwidth. Problem with that is you probably have to include another JavaScript file, so you're actually including another file, which is kind of going against what you're trying to do.
You could add it to that one.
You could, but then you've also got a like on scroll event that's just constantly watching. So that's happening too. Pros or cons? I don't know. That's up for you to decide.
Well, you could set up that event listener if the height of the page is more than your screen height.
You could, but again, this is adding complexity to. If you're doing this with your entire site, you gotta make sure it's always working for the entire site. And again, pros and cons. You gotta decide if this is gonna be cool for you or not.
Yeah.
Still, very cool effect. Let's see, there's one more thing I want to talk about. Maybe not. Are there any questions at this point? I know I've been kind of meandering through it, but yes, sir.
What's that div with 62.5%? Can you explain that?
Yeah. Okay. So what that is that's go back. Oh no, that's not. Okay, so the div is the gray box there.
Okay.
So again, what I did with that div in particular on that first one here is, so 62.5 is the ratio of the width versus the height on the large image. And so the div's always going to be 100% wide. So what I'm doing is saying, I'm just adding padding, which is going to be 62% of whatever the 100% is. So that just kind of creates that ratio. And again, it fills the space. So it gives that small image a place to go. Otherwise, it's just going to be a tiny image like that. If I didn't have the div there, it would just be this tiny image, and the next paragraph would start right below it. And people would load the page and go, that's weird, those weird little dots are loading on that page for no reason. And then they'd move on. And then I wouldn't get to sell what I was trying to sell them, which is important, or get their email, or whatever I want them to get. Something else to pay attention to is, and again, this is a problem if you're doing this throughout the entire site, is unless you are forcing all your images to be the exact same ratio, you always have to figure out what the ratio is for every image that you put on there, because not all images are 62.5%. You could have a square image, which would be 50% or 100%. You could have a 3:2 ratioed image, which would be different. And you can see that I had 66.6 just as a default for all these, and then when we add this back, add that back. So where it works for the first one, because that's the one I measured, this one's got a little bit extra on the bottom, that one has a lot extra on the bottom. And again, it's because all these images have different ratios. Zebras in the Sahara. Life is beautiful. It's beautiful. It's just like Raiders of the Lost Ark. Nobody else, really? It's beautiful and the guy's head blows up because it was just too beautiful. The art is so beautiful. What about Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Okay. The plane sequence is pretty harsh.
Like the fight in the
Oh,
airport
yeah.
with the big bald dude.
What is what is that if it's not WordPress? Is it just a regular page?
Well, it's a WordPress template that I made. So I made
okay,
yeah.
Gotcha.
So I made a page. I made a template on it. But if you look at what so here's again the cheat that I did.
But you want something more like that you can just apply to everything easily.
It would be a lot nicer if you could.
Okay.
Yeah, the ultimate goal is if I could go into this page, write some content, drop in an image, and the image gets handled so that it does this on its own. You can just see there's a lot involved with it because you need to create a small image, you have to figure out what the ratio is, you have to make sure the JavaScript's in there, make sure the markup changes. It's a lot. Which is why I couldn't write that plugin today, even though I tried to.
And one day.
One day. I also spelled modified wrong in the slug, I do realize that. Is that what you were going to point out just then?
No.
Oh, because your hand went down as soon as I said that. Okay. But again, so you can see there's not actually any content I entered here. All I did was choose the modified template, which lame, right? That's not the way to do this. So, like I said, it's a cool effect. It is kind of difficult to work it into WordPress, and I think it's kind of difficult to work it into a website in general because it can be so customized if you have a lot of different kind of imagery. That said, I do think it is a very interesting solution to keeping your page load down, or at least that initial page load, to get the user to the point where they can start reading the content, using the page, scrolling, interacting, and still give them the full page experience eventually. Do you have a question though?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, if we put this in the context of WordPress completely, my second use case I've turned to is galleries.
Yeah.
You know, so want to take a minute and talk through how we might tackle applying this.
So if you did this with a gallery?
Like
Yeah.
phase 2 of your plugin. She's already on phase 2.
I know.
Yeah, that's phase 2.
That's the paid version of the plugin.
That's the pro version.
And sliders is phase 3.
No more sliders. Sliders are
Well,
done.
I know we should all object to those.
Okay.
Some people would pay money for the slider.
Most people pay money. Most people have to pay money for sliders because we're not building them otherwise.
Right.
We never build one for free.
But that would be justification for getting the someone's paying for it.
I think with the gallery, I think it depends on how you're showing the gallery. Because if you're paging through thumbnails and your thumbnails are manageable, you probably wouldn't do it that way. When you're bringing the gallery up and you're showing big images, that's a tough one. Ideally, what I think I would do instead of that is when you're looking at one image, you're kind of loading the next one. So when they slide, it's ready to go, and then you load the next one. That said, they might click faster than those pages or those images are loading. So you may want something like that to let them know the image is here, but kind of not yet. So hang on. Although maybe that confuses them because they load in a blurry image.
Yeah, but also, I mean, when you finish making this plugin, it's a plugin that's going to address any IMG call, probably, right?
It could be, but we could isolate it too, because we could make it the kind of thing where it's you could specify by giving an image a particular class. So if an image has a class, then give this treatment to it, or it could just be images within the content area, but not in widgets or header, footer, templates, stuff like that. So we could be creative about it if we wanted to. That said, we could go willy-nilly, do everything, and see what happens to people's sites.
I don't know if it would run in, it probably only runs in some browsers, but you can blur an image with CSS, right? And then you can change it on hover and animate that. So in a gallery situation, perhaps all the images are blurred, and then as you hover over the thumbnail, it's taking away the blur.
That's actually a very interesting idea. The only caveat I would add to that is that the CSS blurring effect, I do think is
pretty specific to just a few browsers.
Yeah, I think browser support is the only thing that's killed
it's
that.
in the standard, it's not widely supported yet.
Yeah, being in the standard
It's
doesn't
the
mean
filter.
anything for us, unfortunately.
CPU head.
Wouldn't that still require the full image to be downloaded though?
Yeah.
So it doesn't save you the download time.
Well, it does if you only
If you never look at it, it does.
No,
Because it's
if-
kind of doing it on demand at that
If you
point.
only use the small image, it would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be okay for thumbnails, but not for
Yeah, that's a very interesting idea too, though. I like it. I like the way you think, man. Any other discussion points or thoughts? Any other ideas? Things we could have tried? Things I didn't think of?
Are there any penalties with leaving the original image still in the DOM? So would it be good to do some housekeeping as you switch to get the other one?
Because that would leave the same amount of markup, which would be nice.
I don't know if
Yeah,
now we're
you
going
absolutely
into
could.
an SEO kind of thing, like a robot.
Okay, so yeah, that's okay. Here's another thing to think about, because that's a good point with SEO.
You're going to get an email 2 months from now about something about that. All the time.
But that's only if, so when Google indexes a page, it rarely triggers like the onReady JavaScript.
Oh, okay.
So I think it's only going to see the tiny ones. But the weird thing about that is when,
Oh, no.
because
But what are the
okay, you know where
I know exactly where you're going. Your image, all
your images on your site are going to be these tiny little blurry images. So if somebody searches,
The
like so on my
Facebook
site
open
here,
graph image is gonna
This might be
they want
good,
some higher
though.
balloon over nice landscape.
That's terrible.
Your image will come up and read this
Terrible.
tiny little image because you put a good alt tag in there that made sense and kind of Google doesn't know what you're doing, but at the same time, it means no one's going to be ripping off your images, so that could be a positive. You turn a negative into a positive.
To watermark the blurred image, so this little tiny like.
Yeah, but that's really clear though. This is the website it came from. Don't steal this.
So
There's
I have
hot
a
linking
question.
protection.
Yeah, you can do that too, but there's hot linking and it's just like taking the image and using it as well.
We need the opposite. We need hot linking
Linking. Oh,
enabled.
that's definitely forbidden.
We need the opposite way because it's like at this point, yeah, you're going to be sharing a whole bunch of those little images.
Yeah.
Huh.
But as far as SEO goes, I think we're okay because I don't think it's going to see it with the fully rendered HTML of both images.
Well, is using figure instead, is that helpful in that scenario?
I don't know.
With figures,
I don't think so because you're using that data element to tell the URL for that image, and it's not going to know to look for that. Especially if you call it data-jeff.
Correct. That said, in the small image, do be sure to put an alt tag in there because alt tags are incredibly important. Well,
For
it's another
accessibility.
piece of the SEO pie.
But accessibility.
Accessibility too. That's correct.
Screen-
Oh
So,
no, this is.
Someone who's blind isn't going to know that you put a blurry image in there,
That's
and they're going
No,
to
but
have
it
it in the
still
screen
has
reader.
to have that for,
the alt tag.
the alt tag has to be that for screen readers and things
Yeah.
like that.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's important. Right?
Alt tag, sorry, it's blurry.
It's really funny. Google actually said this is the screen reader tells you this is a blurry image of a balloon over a landscape. How did it know?
Definitely part of your markup here in your plugin. Just
That's
it
right.
says blurry image.
Blurry.
That's what you're talking.
Blurry image.
deliberately blurry.
So has anyone? I mean, is that something we should bring up to this particular project? That hey, have you ever thought about Google Images and what's the next thing that you could do to try to fix that?
That's a great question, and I do think it kind of comes down to if you're the kind of site where Google image searches still brings you a lot of traffic, then absolutely that's going to be very important.
Yeah, images are good.
Is this happening on Medium?
Right.
I don't know.
No.
They're probably doing it this
I got this from a
exact
guy.
They're
who
like,
did a
actually, we
thing
never
with
get sued by Getty. Check this out. The images are blurry.
and I watermarked them afterward. So,
Well, they made a blog post saying, "Here's what we're doing in full detail.
yeah.
We patented this."
It's a very interesting idea. It
Did
is
they
a
patent
lot
it?
of work to make it happen, but there are definitely load benefits because of it. So it's something worth considering if you have a page loading issue.
I was gonna say, I wonder if you wrote like an htaccess rule that if it wasn't coming from your site, then it would, like kind of what Jason was saying, like reverse hot link it. So
Okay, so it
basically
swaps
it would
the-
take whatever that source is, find the original, and serve that as a 301 instead of serving the small blurry image.
Three other ones for images.
The site JM
That's
Press
kind of a cool idea. That kind of.
They started talking about it, about the image search ramifications of
Well,
doing
that
it.
one's talking about how Google does it, which Google just gets the primary image and loads that as the background color for the div before it loads the image in.
Yeah.
Which is a different idea, which is still, so what Jason's talking about, sorry, what we're talking about out of context is later on they start talking about other things people are trying. One of which is this, what Google does here, which again, so they, before the images load in, they just get a div that's got to contain the image, and they'll put a background image in there. So to the user, it appears something's happening. This is interesting. I'm going to keep looking, and you trust Google anyway. So
We do.
how they get the primary image off that, I don't know, but they're Google, and it's the same way they get most of my information. I don't know, but they have it.
Well, they know everything. So.
They do. That's why that's why I get those weird text
Yeah,
alerts.
the
Like
primary image is in a database.
The
somewhere.
image library, Image Magic,
Image
can
Magic
give
does
you
it?
that.
Oh,
Like you
Okay.
resize the image to 1 pixel by 1 pixel,
and you just pull
and it does all the averaging for you.
it. Nice.
That's why they call it magic.
Right. They spell it wrong. I think.
That's part of the magic.
I think that's ignorance. Literacy.
Sounds like good SEO to me, to be perfectly honest.
So this is another idea though, is to rather than load anything, don't even load an image, just put a background color in there and make a div. Again, it could be interesting because if we did it on our page, we probably get kind of a blue and
Or brown.
maybe
Every
a
image would be brown.
green. Look at the dog. And probably a blue or a green. All these are gonna be blue or green, and then not blue or green.
Green,
Well, but you're assuming
Look at the line on it. The horizon's
Orange.
ridiculously straight.
that would still require referencing the image and figuring out the primary color. Right, so, but it looked to me like Spotify was just randomly using one of their two basic colors.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a way to get that information ahead of time and put that into the markup. Make it a
Yeah.
data attribute,
Go
data background,
Yeah.
data color, data primary.
On Save Post, you look at any images
That's
that
right.
are in the markup, and then go look at the image file.
Solving all the problems for people.
Yeah.
Good thing
Do the overhead on the.
I know.
We really need a copy
For
of this.
posterity, yeah.
But doing that overhead on the Save Post means you only have to do it once instead of every single page.
Yeah.
Right.
And then you modify the markup with that information.
They just make it part of the meta.
Yeah. And then you can also create your thumbnail.
I kind of
The
like
tiny one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of like just using like the poltergeist kind of screen.
You like the blurry.
Just so gray, and just make it all gray and black and white, so you don't worry about what color the background
Staticky.
is. Just simple like that.
Do you like just the gray boxes? You mean?
Well, if you were gonna go color, I would just go that like the TV screen when it goes.
The static, and then this house is clear. And all that?
We're
The
back.
same,
We're back. It's
No, doesn't the lady say this house is clear when she walks out at the end?
We're back.
No, you have to say it.
When
Like,
it's on
you have
the
to mean
screen.
it.
Yeah.
Well, that's what the TV was. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. It kind of still gives me nightmares.
As it should.
Poltergeist?
That
Oh,
one was
yeah.
a little scary. That
I
was
saw it as a
scary.
little kid, man.
I did too. I actually haven't seen it since, but it's still the idea of watching it's unpleasant.
We should do it. One
Yeah.
dev
We'll make that one of our dev
meetups.
meetups.
Moving
Oh,
on.
Which is
October would be appropriate, wouldn't it?
Oh,
Halloween.
yes.
It's coming up. Yeah.
It's very
We'll watch all of
October.
them.
Or just one of them. Okay. It's a 2-hour meetup. That's not. Or we could fast forward through all of them and watch them in high speed.
Yeah, just go through
Let's
this.
watch
video.
skip our scary part. Can we just watch some funny?
What's the scary
Poltergeist in
part?
60 seconds.
Tell me if it's over,
Job
right?
descripts.
I no longer feel safe in this group.
All right. I feel like we beat this to death, but I am willing to keep going. This is really
Yeah, we've solved all the problems.
Great way
This
to
is
ask
Yeah.
the
in depth.
question.
This is.
It was
I
good.
don't
though.
think
This
you
is-
solved the open graph issue though.
Yeah, you still
Well,
have to
but that's
mark
meta
up
though.
Blurry
Like you can
images
solve that
down.
with
It
an
might
open graph
conflict with
tag.
the whole
Yeah.
Yoast SEO
Yoast
list.
is gonna.
Because Yoast will pull that in for you.
Well, you
Yeah,
can
but if you set
specify
up-
the image for
If we
open
change
Yeah,
the
you
markup,
can
is Yoast
specify
still
that.
gonna
No,
nail that, or are
Yoast.
we? No, it should
No,
be
he
fine.
doesn't like when people are messing with JavaScript stuff.
Well, don't tell him. Erase this video.
I will not.
I'm tagging
Give us a
Ghost.
copy first.
Not for public consumption.
Alright.
Oh, not safe for work.
Not safe for meetups. I like that you're all looking with so much anticipation right now. Like, is this it? I think it is. I don't know. I feel like we're
Oh, are we
done.
supposed to clap?
No! Definitely not. I just want to make sure there weren't any other questions.
Or future requests,
Alright, I'm out of here.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Hefe.
My pleasure, man.